Yeah, calm down.
All right, I think we're live. Good evening, everybody. Today is December 17th, and this is podcast 18 for Project SIP. Uh, Today, we're going to talk about the vaccines and more, actually, than that, hopefully. But before I get to the panel, I did want to give a update on COVID here in the United States. Right now, today only, we did almost 2 million tests. Out of that, almost a quarter million people tested positive, and we had just over 3,400 deaths here in the United States. So all of those were records for the pandemic. So we're doing this even better than we were in March, if you want to call that better. Um, Here in California, we have a ICU problem, intensive care unit problem, where pretty much any place south of Fresno has no availability on ICUs, and the state as a whole has just under 3% ICU availability. So we need to make sure we're as safe as possible here, because if you get sick right now in any capacity, uh, unfortunately, there's not beds out there for you. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I want to go to our panel here. I have Kylan, Amanda, Jules, Vlad, and Jake tonight with me. And we're going to talk about the vaccine that is coming out. So we've already had one vaccine approved through the whole entire process and is already being administered to first responders and frontline healthcare workers. But we have another 4 vaccines after that potentially could come. One of them is a long way off. They just started the third stage, but I do want to talk about the other 2 that are very important and actually are very close. The first one we're going to talk about is the Pfizer vaccine. So, really quickly, I wanted to bring out some stats for at least this vaccine. So, it's going to be done in 2 doses. You have to take the first one and then the second one within 21 days. Then then you're going to have about a 95% chance of not getting COVID. But the caveat is that it has to be transported at about negative 60 to negative 80 degrees Celsius, which is a problem for some of our wonderful hospitals that don't have storage like that. So you have to make sure dry ice is available, which there's now shortages of. Um, it was recommended by if I remember correctly, the CDC or the FDA on the 10th, and it was just approved on the 11th. But we also have 2 other vaccines. But first, I want to go to our panel and go one by one to see if you're going to take the vaccine when it's approved and available to you. And so I want to start with Kylan.
Yeah, so initially, my thing was, let things play out. Let's see if there's any sort of, negative ramifications or things like that. But, after talking it over with my family, I plan on taking it. You know, a lot of people, are like, I'm not going to take it, or it's the government that's against you, or all this type of stuff. And the thing is, I completely understand, especially in the black community, why people may think that, because of things like the Tuskegee experiment, because of all the things that have happened throughout American history to persons of color, Native Americans, African Americans, but at the same time, these vaccines have nothing to do with Donald Trump. Whatever pressure he tried to put, this was all done by science. This was all done, you know, by the right people. And you know, my thing is, what's going on now is 35 people, 3,500 people a day are dying. 200,000 plus people are being infected daily. People that do have COVID and recover, many of them have lifelong issues are going to have things that they haven't even discovered yet. That's going to be, nagging things that are going to be hurting people. And so, for me, the alternative to me is worse. And I would rather be able to get back to normal life and be able to get the economy up and running and be able to, have people do things that they want to do and not have fear of dying. There's a million other things that can kill us right now. Cops, each other, regular sickness, let's cross COVID off the list. So me and my family do plan on taking it.
That's great, Kylan. That's a great way to put it. There are a lot of other big problems, but of course we want to do some preventative measures. I do want to throw this out there. Today is actually the 9-month anniversary, if that's a word, of the lockdowns here in California. So that means a baby that was conceived right before the lockdowns is being born right now.
I actually have a friend who conceived during the early quarantine, and she just gave birth like a day or two ago.
It's a great fun fact. So
yep. 5 weeks early. He's a preemie, but still, yeah.
But there you go. So there's going to be a couple. There might be a little baby boom, maybe.
A true coronial.
True coronial. I do want to throw this.
Child of the corn.
So speaking of coronials that are coming, Vladimir, let's go to you for if you and your family are taking the vaccine.
Well, thank you, Tyler. So, yes, I, to make sure that Tyler's little segue to me makes sense. My wife and I are expecting our first child to come in February. So he was conceived during the earlier months of the pandemic. Do the math, but so. At first, when the vaccine was announced, I had a similar reaction to Kylan. I kind of wanted to see a little bit more data because your typical vaccine cycle is considerably longer. I mean, this one was developed in about 9 months, give or take. And your typical cycle, I believe, is somewhere around 3 years to encompass all the testing and everything like that. But the more I think about it, and the more I see the numbers keep going up and, setting records of like, we're basically seeing another 9/11 or another Pearl Harbor every day in America. And also, upon like discussions with my wife and my family, myself, I have asthma, which puts me at a much higher risk for complications from COVID. So, that said, if the vaccine was available to me today, I would have gotten it today. My wife is a healthcare worker actually, and she was given the option to get the vaccine right now because at her place of work, at her hospital, they're actually vaccinating. They started vaccinating, I believe, yesterday. Vaccinating all the frontline healthcare workers, and she's considered a frontline worker, but she's not getting it because of the pregnancy. And there is just not enough, if there were complications for me, if I were to get it, and I felt shitty for a week or something like that, it's not really that big of a deal. However, if she were to get it and there were some sort of adverse effects on her or, our unborn child this close to the, the due date, it would be just the worst of all possible situations. That said, we're both going to get it. It just might, I'll get it whenever it becomes available. She wants to get it before she goes back to work from leave.
Okay. That's a fair assessment because obviously for you and your family, that's very important. And your wife being a frontline worker, good on her. We really look and thank her for her job that she's doing right now. So, Jules, will you take the vaccine when it's available?
Absolutely. It appears to be safe. It appears to have relatively minor side effects, if any. I know there's been a couple people who had an allergic reaction. I think that's true to the statistical likelihood that anybody could have an allergic reaction. I haven't heard of anything major that gives me any pause to not take it when it becomes available for the general population. My only disappointment is that Trump twice refused to purchase more of the vaccine when he was offered by Pfizer 2 times over the last 3 months or so. Trump refused to buy more vaccine for the first quarter and second quarter of 2021. And so we're not going to have enough of it for everybody. So it's going to have to be rationed. Luckily, the Moderna vaccine will be coming out shortly, and that should get approved probably very soon, or if it might have already gotten approved.
It's not approved as of right now. It's just recommended as of right now.
Mhm.
It'll probably be approved by tomorrow.
It'll probably be
Yeah.
approved tomorrow or on Monday, most likely tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah. And the great thing about the Moderna vaccine is, unlike the Pfizer vaccine, it doesn't require sub-zero temperatures. So it's a lot more stable. So they can get it to a lot more hospitals and clinics that don't necessarily have that capability.
So that's the thing that is awesome that you brought up there, Jules, is that I mentioned on the Pfizer vaccine, it needs to be stored between -60 and -80 degrees Celsius. Well, on the Moderna vaccine, they only need to store that somewhere between -30 and -20 degrees Celsius. So that's more reasonable. You don't have to use as much dry ice. You don't have to use as much cold storage, because when you get to -100 degrees Fahrenheit, that's chilly. That's really chilly. So that's a good thing there. Before I go to my next panelist, I do want to say both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are new technology out there. And that's one of the reasons why people are kind of skittish about it, because it's using messenger RNA to defeat the virus, if that makes sense. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about why that is a benefit over, let's say, the AstraZeneca vaccine, which kind of uses a hybrid mix of the two. But I want to go to Amanda to see if she is going to take the vaccine when it's available to her.
I am. And I think I initially was like, I'll wait a little bit. I don't want to be in the first round. But then I realized I'm not going to be in the first round. I'm not a healthcare worker. I'm not an old person in a nursing home. And even though I'm an essential worker as a public defender, we don't get benefits like that. We don't get put to the front of the line. And, I've always been cautious about newer vaccines. I mean, just one example from my own life. I'm the only lady on the panel, but there is a vaccine called Gardasil, which is a vaccine for HPV for women. And I was a young woman when it first came out, and it wasn't very effective. It didn't, like, the first round of it wasn't that good. So I didn't get it, because I was like, well, what if something goes wrong, or what if it doesn't work? So that's the only vaccine I've ever voluntarily not taken. And having that in my mind, I was like, well, maybe I'll wait to get this one. But like Vlad, I also have asthma, and this is obviously way more serious than a possible STD that might result in cancer. So it's definitely something I'm going to take once it's available to me. And I'm not really worried about the side effects. In my own experience, when I get vaccines, my arm's just a little sore for a few days. And if anybody gets a fever, that's actually a normal immune response, because that means your body is doing what it's supposed to do. And I'm also not really worried about the new technology, because it's mRNA transcriptions are actually not new technology in that way. It's the first time we've done it for a vaccine on such a wide scale. And so I think that fears about it being so new aren't really something I'm worried about, because the technology itself has been there for a long time. It's just really the first opportunity they've had for widespread use. And the fact that they had this technology established already is one of the reasons why they were able to develop the vaccine so quickly. So I'm not personally really worried about that. And I forget who said it. It may have been Kylan. Somebody said something about, Trump and the not
That
getting.
was Jules.
Jules. Sorry, Jules. not getting the extra doses. I think it's really important to remember that he and some of his base are trying to kind of take credit for this vaccine. America had nothing to do with this. This was all Turkish scientists in Germany, and America just had a advanced purchase agreement in July, and they didn't take the extra doses. They didn't have anything to do with the development or investing or funding for this. So, I mean, yay Germany, and yay Turkish.
Pfizer and BioNTech, I guess that's how we kind of I think that's the second company is what I was getting at. Sorry. That's the second company that's available that helped Pfizer with this, which I think was a European company that Amanda was kind of mentioning. Jake, would you take the vaccine when it's available to you?
I'm not going to be in the first wave just by simple placement of who I am and in society and what the demands on me are, and I'm happy with that. My life supports me not jumping to it, luckily, so I will happily be in line where I am. And honestly, if it comes to it, the technology behind it is fascinating and seems really solid. And the fact that it isn't new technology and isn't behind the structure of the United States, to me, is all really fantastic supporting factoids. So I'll sit in line where I am. I'm not in a rush, but I'm not stressed about it either.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. I do want to throw out that there are some surveys that have been going out for the last month or so. So right now in America, only about 24% of people are for sure, like gung-ho, want to take the vaccine right now. Here in California, ABC Bay Area did a survey, and they said about 74% of Californians were okay with taking the vaccine now. With the American survey, it's more people were unsure about taking the vaccine than not going to take it. But 95% of our viewers, when we asked you guys a couple of weeks ago, you guys all said that you were going to take it. It was 95% of you. That's a big deal. So I want to ask Kylan, why do you think there are people that are unsure about it? I mean, you kind of mentioned it earlier about Tuskegee for people of color, but why do you think other people would have issues with taking it now?
Well, like I said, when we talk about, persons of color, African Americans, Native Americans, Tuskegee and other things, when it comes to, persons of color throughout the history, that plays a part. But I also think when we talk about the populace at large, I think a lot of it comes with a lot of misinformation, a lot of conspiracy theorists. I think, there's a lot with the anti-vaxxer movement that have gotten their hands on this. And so there's a lot of competing factors that are playing a role in people not feeling comfortable. And I think a lot of it also are, a lot of people, some Democrats and progressive that, aren't very trusting and think that Trump has something to do with that. And I think, another big part of the lack of trust in the vaccine comes from the president of the United States. He doesn't give Americans reason to trust anything. When you're tweeting out that you're going to fire the FDA commissioner if they don't give approval that they were already planned on giving, or when you say the virus is a hoax the whole time. So on the one hand, you say the virus is a hoax and it's just the flu and it's not that bad, but then you want to be ordained a Baptist minister and say that the vaccine is all because of your greatness and glory. And so Donald Trump and those that support him, they're pretty much on ice skates because they don't know which way the hell that they're going. Do they want to be conspiracy theorists, or do they want to be hailed in their glorious genius? So I think all of those factors play a part in, kind of the doubts across different spectrums on the vaccine.
Okay, perfect. I also want to go to I also want to go to Vlad to see kind of why you think that people don't want to take the vaccine. And by the way, I do want to say you could join us in the comments down below and like and share out to your friends, because we want to know why you want to or do not want to take the vaccine. But go ahead, Vlad. I'm sorry.
No worries, Tyler. Thank you. So I think the problem is kind of twofold, especially in America. I think one of the issues is the fact that we've been given so much misinformation about this virus since the very beginning, by the current administration. There's been complete and utter just lies, misstatements. Things are just, and people are just having a very hard time trusting anything that comes out of, not necessarily just this White House, but the government in general, whether it's state government, local government, not federal government, whatever. There's just a really tough, like people have kind of developed like a little bit of a hard shell around themselves, like over the last 4 years, and it's hard to break through that. I think another issue kind of stems to like American society as a whole, where there's a large subset of American society that is just afraid of things that are new. And this vaccine is something new. Granted, the technology has been there for a little while. The methods to develop it, they've been there for a little while, but this vaccine in itself is new. And, it's sad to say, but a lot of people in this country don't necessarily follow science and don't understand science. So they're afraid of it. And that's just the way it's going to be. I think it's going to happen that there's going to be a few waves of vaccinations. We're going through the first wave right now with essential frontline healthcare workers. And once we see that these waves go through relatively without a hitch, without any major complications, no one's going to die. It's not going to be the next, there's not going to be the zombie outbreak or whatever. Then it's going to get more and more people on board. And then eventually it's going to come down to almost peer pressure amongst your family members, where it's going to be 6 people, members of a family, are going to get it, and they're going to look at that one, like ultra right wing Trump supporter, and they're going to say, "You're never coming over unless you get this vaccine," and hopefully they'll get it. But like I said, man, I think it's really comes down to just misinformation, and people are just scared of things that are new and things that they don't understand.
Which is a good point. Although I do want to say that it's not just Trump supporters that are not into taking the vaccine, because we have a lot of people on the left, the far left, that are all about their chakras and their yoga, and that will take care of their vaccine.
Whoa. You're right. And they've got those wonderful smelling, what do you call them? Essential oils.
Essential oils.
Cure it all. Yeah, there you go.
To be clear, it's the white yoga community.
Yes.
I didn't interject right into this.
Jake, there are multiple studies that say that essential oils do nothing for the coronavirus. However, your collection of healing crystals will knock this virus out in 2 seconds.
Don't forget about your Himalayan salt lamp.
Now,
but the salt lamp makes it nice to look at your pretty crystals, and they smell good. What's the problem here?
So before we go too off track, because we can make fun of ourselves for that, but
we're not making fun of ourselves.
Well, I mean, as a collective left-leaning side, I guess you could say, but we also do have a lot of stuff on the right as well. So it's a lot to combat. So Vlad, you brought a little bit about the science. So the science which is amazing when you read about it, on the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, they are basically targeting the spikes on the coronavirus. So the coronavirus is called the coronavirus because it is like a crown. It's a circular virus that has little spikes on the top of it. So there's proteins on those spikes that basically tell whatever cells it infects to create more of it, to duplicate it. The RNA, the messenger RNA, the mRNA, is kind of that link that tells the cell to make that. So in targeting that protein and saying, hey, this is the protein that is on the coronavirus or SARS-CoV-2, which is what we have right now for COVID, basically your immune system will see it and be like, hey, I know that's not a part of me. I need to destroy it. So it'll destroy it. And then
There's
it'll
that
create,
asshole.
there's that asshole. They will, your body will create antibodies that it'll protect itself for it in the future. And then it sees it again a second time. And it's like, oh yeah, I can build a stronger defense against it. So that's the reason why there's 2 doses. And that's the reason why your immunity will be higher on the second doses. Then if you do get SARS-CoV-2 entering your system, it'll see the protein on the virus and say, oh, need to destroy it because there is that, as Kylan said, asshole again. So we can go after that at that point. The only thing that we don't know, because of the time that we've had developing and testing the vaccine as of right now with this new technology, is how long is the immunity going to last?
Mhm.
And that is kind of an issue there. Another issue is allergies. So right now we've had the UK say that they need to put allergy labels on the vaccine, and we've had a couple people in Alaska that have had allergic reactions, nothing fatal, something semi serious, but these are, if you have allergic reactions to things, this is something that can happen. But um, I did want to ask Vlad about the allergies, if you've
Mhm.
heard about them, and if if that is something that we should all be worried about.
No, I really don't. I think the British government, basically the NHS, said that there needs to be an allergy warning after 2 people had an adverse allergic reaction. However, the 2 people who had the reaction have severe allergies to begin with, and actually carry EpiPens with them everywhere they go. So for those that don't know, an EpiPen is something that you can basically inject yourself with epinephrine in case you have a severe allergic reaction to anything. People with really bad like nut allergies carry them all over the place. So you run into a situation like that. The case in Alaska, the person who got the vaccine didn't have any sort of prior history. However, they kind of got her in the hospital stable. She got stable really quickly after having her reaction, and as far as to my knowledge, she was checked out of the hospital. So is there an allergy risk? Sure, there's an allergy risk with any vaccine. You can have an allergic reaction to the flu vaccine that we get yearly. Is it severe enough to prevent a lot of people from taking this vaccine to a virus that could potentially kill you? I don't think so. I really don't think it's anything to worry about.
Okay, Vlad said there's nothing to worry about, but I want to go to Amanda. Uh, Obviously, the stuff with the UK and with Alaska has gotten people's tensions a little bit higher about it. Do you feel the same way?
No, not personally. I think somebody mentioned it earlier, like that's within the statistical range of how many people might have an allergic reaction. And the 2 people in the UK had a history of allergies. The 2 people in Alaska did not. So, I mean, there are a large number of potential side effects. Some people put that in the realm of vaccine injury. Others, it's just that's your immune system. I don't think you can really control for all possibilities. And with how effective this vaccine is supposed to be, I think it's worth some of that risk. It's, I think some people I've seen online who are kind of anti-vaxxers are pointing to the fact that, oh, X number of people died during the trials. And it's like, yeah, from like an unrelated heart attack. Like that had nothing to do with the vaccine. And you have no idea if that person had a placebo or not, because you don't know. You just report what you're experiencing when you're in one of these trials. But I want to, if it's okay, kind of touch back to something we were talking about earlier. You mentioned the Black community. And so I had a question. I know, Tyler, you're in moderator mode, but I was wondering if you and Kylan could give your thoughts on something that was in the news recently. Dr. Fauci, to try to kind of speak to the Black community, said something along the lines of, to my African American brothers and sisters, the vaccine that you're going to be taking was developed by an African American woman. And he's referring to Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, who has kind of been really hot on social media because she's young and she's a young Black woman who is kind of heading Moderna's development of their vaccine. And so I wanted to know from you guys, since obviously I can't speak to what the Black community thinks or feels about Dr. Fauci's comments or about this particular doctor's role in the development of the vaccine. What do you guys think that comment, or the fact that she's, one who spearheaded the science behind this, what do you guys think the impact might be on the Black community's willingness to take the virus based on your experiences?
I'll start off with this one.
Yeah.
Sorry, not take the virus, take the vaccine.
I got you. My personal thought is that it's not going to play too big of a factor, be too much of a determining factor in the collective decision making of the African American community. I'm not saying that she's a token, but I think overall she may be seen as some sort of token marketing thing to just try to, make people believe a certain thing. I think the only thing that's going to get the African American community overall to be able to take this vaccine is going to be, the continuous honest rollout of this vaccine and continue honest coverage of what's going on, continuing, honest and equitable distribution of the vaccine. I think there needs to be a level of trust that needs to be established. Again, because I do go back, when you go throughout the history of the United States of America, there's a lot of reasons that African Americans don't have trust in the United States government or in the medical community at large. I mean, even right now to this day, there's bias, both overt and subliminal biases in the medical community towards African Americans. Whereas, you survey doctors and they say, and there's doctors that think that, that Black people feel less pain and they prescribe less pain medication to Blacks. You have a mortality rate where we have Black women dying at, twice the rates of white women in childbirth, when a Black woman says, hey, something's wrong with me, something's wrong, and the doctors dismiss her, and then the next thing you know, she dies in childbirth. And so there are deep-seated factors, not just dealing with the virus, but just in the medical community in general, that need to be overcome to get to the level of trust and belief to think that we're getting a fair deal, because when you look at COVID right now, you say, hey, Black folks should be taking this vaccine because we're the ones dying the most of it. But, you look at a Black person and like, well, why the hell are we the ones dying the most of it? Don't just tell me that it's because we're fat and we have the most diabetes and heart disease. Hell, maybe the government's trying to kill us. And I don't think that's, you can't just laugh that off as conspiracy theory or being dumb. When you're in a place for 400 years, when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, and you take the abuse that African Americans or Native Americans have taken throughout American history, that's going to play a factor, and there needs to be trust to get to that point. Sorry for the long-winded answer, Amanda, but it's not a simple answer because there's a lot of determining factors why a community feels and thinks the way that they do.
Thank you, Kylan.
And I completely agree with Kylan on that. There are a bunch of different levels, and I do feel like the African American community, the Black community, the Native American population will take this with a lot of pause for a while. I mean, obviously it's going to be good the way that this is being rolled out, and that we have a chance to sit there and be like, wait a second, this is okay. Obviously we've had a lot of trials. I know a couple people that were a part of the trials, and we all know people here that have had the vaccine within the last week that it's been available. So there's going to be a lot of time before we all get it. We probably won't get it until the middle of next year, just based on our age and our comorbidities and our vocational level, I guess you could say. So majority of the population has nothing to worry about, because by the time it does get to them, we'll have more than a year into this, into the testing, into the make sure that this is a good long-term strategy. And even if basically, and I did ask this question about long-term, if this is going to be good for us long-term in terms of immunity. Well, even if it's not, even if it's 6 months to a year, if we have immunity for that long, we're able to study this virus more and come up with better technologies to help prevent it from being an issue and prevent people from having to be in ICUs and take up ventilators because they're sick. I mean, that's the same thing we've done with the flu. We don't necessarily have great medicines, but we at least have medicines to help eliminate some of the symptoms of it. So that's kind of how I feel about it, to answer your question.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully it did.
Yeah, I mean, because it did. I mean, Kyla made a good point. It did feel like kind of like token, but at the same time, it's like she's awesome. So that's why I'm like, what impact do you guys think it has? And so I appreciate your answers. I really do.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about what my family members are going to say when it comes time to get a vaccine there. But so we talked about Pfizer and how they took money from Project Warp Speed to basically ramp up the distribution of the vaccine, but not necessarily for the development of the vaccine. So that's one of the reasons why Trump wasn't like pushing to have this vaccine out there. But Moderna did. Moderna is a very similar vaccine to Pfizer, as we've kind of talked about, except for the cooling of it in the storage. So it's a little bit easier to get out there. You have to take the vaccine twice, once and then 4 weeks later. So 28 days, you'll take it again. As we mentioned before, it's recommended today, and hopefully tomorrow it's approved. So that's going to be even more vaccine out there for everybody to get. The thing about Moderna, though, I don't know if you guys didn't know this, but Moderna really hasn't put anything out for public consumption before. They've been a company around for about 10 years, and they are just now putting out their first thing. They took a lot of money for Operation Warp Speed. Jake, I want to ask you, does that have a bearing on you taking Moderna's vaccine or not?
No, I mean, I think Pfizer's vaccine, given that they're relatively similar technology, and Pfizer's was just well outside of the bounds of anything the United States had its grips on. The fact that Trump was avid in deregulation and setting it up so that companies were completely protected from any rebuke or lawsuit, just it's like layers of red flag, in my opinion. Not handled well. Doesn't mean they can't still produce good science. Doesn't mean that the people who did it aren't still good scientists or are still trying to do the right thing. I just think that there's layers of reasons not to avidly jump for that one when you don't have to.
So basically what you're saying is we didn't have to push for them to get it done. We need to make sure they get it done. Yeah. Okay. Jules, do you feel the same way as Jake does?
Yeah, overall, I think Moderna, although they're kind of new onto the playing field here, I don't really see any reason to believe that their science is in any way flawed. I hope that I don't distrust that Project Warp Speed could have results. I'm somewhat skeptical on the rushing of it, but it does seem like they're fairly similar vaccines between Pfizer and Moderna. And it does seem like they can produce it maybe more quickly and distribute it more easily, given the lack of chilling that they have to do to it to distribute it, so they can get it to smaller clinics, to get it to places where it's a little less funded for high tech refrigerant things. So I mean, I think there's, my understanding is that it's less effective by 5 to 10 percentage points. That probably just reflects the fact that they are a newer company with a less impact in terms of the industry. So they have newer scientists, people who are a little less able to fulfill their jobs as well as Pfizer, because Pfizer is going to pay the big bucks. Seems like a good alternative, though. I would be happy to take either.
Now, Jules, you bring up a great point that I wanted to bring up to the panel, is that, yeah, Moderna's only been around for 10 years, but we all know Pfizer's been around forever. They've come up with products such as Viagra, which everybody enjoys so much. But is it a thing that Pfizer has a lot of old technology, old scientists, they're smart and everything, but they're not able to pivot as quickly as somebody as Moderna that's newer and fresher with ideas, kind of like the tech industry is right now? I wanted to ask Amanda, do you kind of see what I'm saying, and do you agree with that? You're on mute though.
I'm sorry.
The first one.
Can you, I apologize. Oh shoot, now I lost my train of thought. Can you really restate the question?
Do you think that Pfizer, being a large, older company, can it pivot as quickly as Moderna, being a younger, fresher company?
I mean, I think there are benefits to the fact that Pfizer is very established. I mean, obviously there are separate issues with Big Pharma, but the fact that they are a very, very established company in the medical community, and they have deep roots, and there's nothing that I've seen that tells me they are not, on the cusp of all the new innovative things in science, in medicine. And Moderna is a newer company when it comes to vaccines. And I agree with Jules, like there's something different or wrong about their vaccine just because they're a newer company. I don't know enough about Moderna in terms of their, the technologies that they have that Pfizer didn't, or anything like that. But, they both have great doctors working for them. And, I don't really see a difference for me between those two vaccines. I'm going to take whatever one is available to me. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, frankly, they are the same vaccine. I mean, they both work the same. They both have very similar efficacy rates. The biggest difference is just the storage of the vaccine. I mean, Pfizer was able to do it, but it had to be really cold. And Moderna was able to figure out, hey, we can do this a little bit warmer, a little bit easier to get out there. And the great thing,
per week for the second boost,
and you just got to wait an extra week, which is neither here nor there, as long as you get it done. I mean, there are obviously a lot of people in the travel industry that would prefer that you take the Pfizer vaccine, but that is one thing there. So we kind of talked about if we were going to take the vaccine, and I asked you guys down in the comments below if you were taking it. So we have somebody such as William Adams that said he was going to hold off and see, and he's grateful to have the luxury for it, but he was going to probably take it later on. But he does have a question for both myself and Kylan. Basically, I I wanted to read it too. He doesn't want to be rude in any way, shape, or form, but I've seen an interesting and sad development in Las Vegas regarding race. Since the pandemic started up until now, have you seen an increase in racial discrimination at all? I ask because in Las Vegas, since we have reopened, crime has drastically increased. The strip is so cheap and it has a lot of violence and theft, which has been increasing and turning people to profile people of color. It's kind of a segue question for him to us off of basically piggybacking off of what Amanda was saying. And so I wanted to ask Kylan kind of what you feel about that.
You know, for me, I've been fortunate, working in finance that I pretty much have been working remotely. So I haven't been out and about. And when I, think about and listen to local news, around the Bay Area and California in general, I haven't been hearing that. But, definitely I appreciate the question, William, because, what you're seeing in Vegas with the kind of profiling, I honestly think that that kind of falls into a more older, more persistent racial profiling that's just part of the basic fabric of this country. And so, with that being said, I think that's my thought on the matter because I personally don't see any additional profiling from opening back up because in California, obviously, we're definitely more sheltered in place and locked down than other places of the country. So a lot of that is kind of like not applicable to us. But, you know, I also care about what people are seeing across the country. And this is something that you're seeing, William. I'm your work for it that you see that. And, my thought on that is that it's very unfortunate. It's very frustrating, for anyone to be profiled. Um, I just, I wish I had a better answer, but that's pretty much what I got. But thanks for the question.
So I think I mentioned this kind of in one of our earlier podcasts, is that the thing I would be worried about, not necessarily here because everybody's wearing masks, everybody's doing that, but in other places like where I come from in West Virginia or North Carolina, where somebody like myself could be wearing a mask and people could take that the wrong way. And even though I'm just trying to protect myself and them, people might be more wary about me. Now, granted, as Kylan said, we live in California where we don't really have that as an issue right now because everybody's doing it. And we mostly are all working from home. And even the ones that aren't, we all have our masks on. So it's a little bit easier. But that is a very good question. I really appreciate you asking that. Again, anybody else who has questions or wants to ask one of the panelists a question, direct it to us in the questions down below in the comments. And again, remember to like and subscribe, or like and then share this, I guess you could say, and we'll be able to produce more of these videos out there for you and these podcasts. We did kind of talk about kind of how who is getting the vaccine first. So we've already talked about first responders and frontline healthcare workers. There have been reports out there that people in our government and people that are in high levels of sports should get the vaccine next. I already see some reactions, so I already know what's coming. But I do want to go to Jules first. Jules, do you think that let's ask, who do you think the next set of people should get the vaccine after our healthcare workers?
After the healthcare workers, how about first responders like firefighters, police, people who interact with people on a daily basis, like grocery store workers, just regular clerks at your local store, people who are interacting with people every day on a daily basis, essential workers, should definitely be on the next round because they are at most risk and they have taken the most risk with almost no reward whatsoever, because the majority of corporate companies like Kroger and Safeway and what have you, they offered a little bit of a bonus for a little while, and then they canceled it. So it's just like a big fuck you to everybody who is doing this essential work, putting their lives in danger every day, and continue to. They are next on the list. Multi-millionaire sports athletes, come on. Like the bubbles worked all right. Do the bubble again. Who cares? They don't deserve to.
Well, you mentioned the bubble.
We don't need more.
We don't need. Okay,
necessary.
that's good. I mean, obviously, essential retail is obviously very essential to us right now. We mentioned the bubble, and I think on the last podcast we did mention how the NFL is refusing to do a bubble, and they're pushing through as hard as possible to make sure they get their season done as normally as possible without doing a bubble. But I wanted to go to Jake about, obviously essential retail is essential to us, but should they get the next round of the vaccine?
I think there's something to be said for. The reason people are pushing for sports is not because these athletes are super important in and of themselves. It's because sports is a marked way to bring morale up in a population. It works. It just does. I think sports is lame. It bores the hell out of me, but it works. Period. Should they be the next wave to get the vaccine? Absolutely not. It's a fucktarded idea to think that they should. There are choke points all over the place that we aren't looking at, like meat packing facilities. Those people, the people who are in the most intense choke points, where what they touch goes to the most people, they should be vaccinated. And we should be looking at that very carefully, because right now the idea that your fucking entertainment is more important is like, great, we'll be thoroughly entertained while we're eating diseased food. Like, what? No, the athletes don't need it next.
Oh, okay. Now we have another question from one of our listeners out there in the world. And it's kind of directed at Amanda, but basically affordability and price with the vaccine. There are countries out there such as India and South Africa that are willing to waive their IP rights to any vaccines that they make. So generic conversions can be made quicker than any other country out there. Is that something that we should be doing just in general, or is it kind of like, we should hold on to it because it's our vaccine? Because, for instance, Operation Warp Speed did pay for a lot of Moderna's research and development on it. It's our vaccine. We should profit from it as Americans.
So I think you kind of mistakenly misread the comment a little bit. It's not that those countries already have vaccines. They're asked, or in that they are not saying we'll waive our India's or South Africa's IP intellectual property rights. What they're doing is they are asking, countries that have developed the vaccine to create, to waive the intellectual property rights to create generic versions. In Asia, in Africa, especially with India, you have some of the largest populations in the world. They're often in less developed, and I put that in quotes because colonization ruins those countries, but less developed nations that sometimes have overpopulation, like with certain areas in India. And so they're at risk for this virus just like anybody else. And so I don't personally know what the pricing and affordability is of the current virus in terms of doctors' offices or governments purchasing it. But I think it would be a good thing for the world, not just for those particular countries, but for the whole world to have access to this. It's kind of like I think it was Jonas Salk, the guy who developed the polio vaccine. He gave the patent away for free, that he didn't want a single penny for it. And so I think that it would be beneficial for the whole world, especially because, we're going to start opening back up again, people are going to travel more. And it's better for the rest of the world if the vaccine can have wide distribution. And if the way to do that affordably for some countries is to allow them to create generic versions that are just as effective, I see no problem with that. And I almost think that Europe and America have a moral, ethical, and human rights obligation to do that because of what colonization has done to these countries. And not just that, but just a moral imperative for all human beings. So that's how I feel about it. I'd like to know what you guys think, since the person who asked that question is a coworker of mine and I see her every day. So.
Tyler,
I was gonna say before I make the mistake of being on mute. Yeah, and we also are posting in our comment section a little article about the intellectual property rules on the vaccine. But Kylan, I wanted to go to you and see what you thought about.
yeah, I'm pretty much on the same boat as Amanda, but what I wanted to add, I think this goes to a broader view when we're talking about, why should we be talking about intellectual property rights for a vaccine that's going to save lives? And that just goes to the larger and broader issue why, in my eyes, there should not be a for-profit healthcare system. When we're talking about who's going to profit from what, who's going to make money from what, who has the intellectual property, who gets to mark their territory by pissing, on the tree and being the biggest swinging cock, that has nothing to do with the health and well-being of humanity. Healthcare and profit is an oxymoron. It's almost like for-profit prison. Like, it makes absolutely no sense that, when you're talking about CEOs who want to get comped on their biggest stock option package and shareholders who are pissing and whining because they want the largest return on their investment, of course they're not. How does that equate to taking care of people and ensuring people's health when you could easily make more money by being a punk ass bitch and saying, you know what, I'm going to deny that insurance claim. You're on your own. Oh, you know what? Go make a GoFundMe, and then once you raise $10,000 in a GoFundMe, then we'll pay for your surgery, because that's actually a real thing that's going on right now. There should absolutely not be for-profit healthcare, period, where we're talking about intellectual property, when we're talking about lives. People living should not be a profit motive. That should be something that everybody, every sentient being has the right to life. Just like they say in America, we Americans have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, guess what? Life means not dying from a virus because you're broke. Life means not dying because your insurance company denies you coverage and denies your surgery because you can't pay for it. So that's just, as you see, I'm a little bit passionate about that. But again, Amanda was spot on, but I just wanted to add to that.
Okay, that's cool. I I do want to throw out that AstraZeneca, for instance, which is the next vaccine that I want to talk about briefly before we move on. AstraZeneca expects to make 2 billion, that's billion with a B, doses of the vaccine next year at about $3 to $4 per dose. So they want to make it cheap, and they want to get it out there readily available for everybody. So AstraZeneca is also kind of collaborating with the Russian creators of the Sputnik V vaccine that was announced about a month or so ago as well. So the reason why they're working with them is because they're using similar technology in that they're getting the DNA from SARS-CoV-2 and putting it in their vaccine. So it's more like a regular vaccine that everybody's more used to. And the great thing about the AstraZeneca vaccine is that it only needs to be stored at 0 degrees Celsius. So freezing. So you don't have to do anything special for that. And it's still taken in 2 doses, separated between 4 weeks. So that will be a big thing long term. But again, right now we have the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines coming out. So that's all I had about vaccines, unless anybody else wanted to join in or add anything else? Cool.
Nope.
So we're an hour in and we're perfect on time. So this is our next topic that we wanted to get to, was about the awesome. Well, I mean, I don't know. Okay. Awesome is probably the wrong superlative, but it's more of like the interesting, because on both sides of the matter, the Biden administration that's coming together is either a yay or a nay or a meh or a what. That's kind of what we're getting from all these announcements lately. I see the reactions from the panelists and they kind of agree with me on this. So we already know that Kamala Harris is going to be the vice president. So she's the first part of the cabinet that's coming out. But there have been a bunch of other picks, including today for Secretary of Interior, which would have been, it was Harlan, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I didn't write it down.
Deb Holland, yeah.
Deb
I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce her last name.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it wrong either, but I would throw it out there. So she would be the first Native American pick for a high level position in the administration. But we also have people like General Lloyd Austin. You have Janet Yellen as the Secretary of Treasury. We have Marcia Fudge as the Secretary of HUD. We could potentially have the first nominated and confirmed LGBT member of the executive branch in Pete Buttigieg as Secretary of Transportation. But then we also have other cabinet picks out there. So I wanted to see who these people are enjoying that they picked so far. So that Joe Biden has picked for his administration. So Jake, do you have anybody that's your favorite pick so far?
I mean, honestly, Deb Haaland is what I'm most excited for. I think putting somebody with Native American background in the Secretary of Interior is a fantastic move. And while it's just a first step in a lot of ways, it's a step I like. More or less, I feel about most of his cabinet the way I feel about Biden. He's milquetoast and he's moving us to the left a little bit. If we could go a little further, I'd like our pendulum to swing more than the tiniest little ratchet effect move. But I'll take something because, you know, better to stave off the inevitable swing back.
That's a very eloquent way of putting it. I'm glad you were able to put that out there, Jake. So Jake feels like, hey, it's just a clean slate, basically. I'm okay with it as long as it's swinging a little bit to the left for him. But I wanted to go to the Vlad next. What do you think so far about your favorite pick?
I honestly have two picks that I really like. I like Deb Haaland for the Secretary of Interior. I think it's about damn time, considering how badly Native Americans have been treated by the U.S. government since before the, even the founding of the United States. So, we're talking over 200 years late, but better late than never. And then I actually like the pick of Pete Buttigieg for Secretary of Transportation.
No, that's an interesting one. Why do you think that?
I do, because I think he's actually going to be able to do something about the crumbling infrastructure in America. If you look at the amount of success that he had in South Bend in basically revitalizing a city that was, by many accounts, dying, and really helping to bring back a downtown area, to bring in investment, and just to revitalize and build relationships to be able to do stuff like that. I think, I don't know, he in some ways gives me hope that he's going to be able to actually do something for infrastructure in America, which has been woefully neglected for years. I mean, not even years, probably decades.
As somebody who is a city planning nerd, I really see infrastructure and our transportation as a big thing that we can improve on here in America. Although I do want to point out that Pete Buttigieg is only in any level of office has been the mayor of
Sure.
South Bend,
Sure.
and that only has 100,000 people. He's going to be leading a department that has over 55,000 people and is serving 330 million people. So
I do understand where you're coming from, and I understand the level of concern there that he might be inexperienced, and we've seen what inexperience in government can do over the last 4 years. That said, I do believe he's actually, he's intelligent enough to surround himself with people who know what's going on and know how to operate in the larger political spectrum of Washington D.C., not the tiny spectrum of South Bend, Indiana. So yes, there are concerns. Sure, he might be a a small fish in a giant pond. There's something about him that just gives me hope that he's going to be able to overcome that and to be able to do it, and also to have the first member of the LGBTQ community in to hold a secretarial position. I think that also speaks volumes.
okay, that's a good answer. I mean, uh, hopefully he'll do a different job than Elaine Chao has done. But
Well,
I wanted to go to Amanda and see what her favorite pick has been so far.
I have a lot of thoughts on a lot of the cabinet picks, but I would agree that Deb Holland, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but she is my favorite. I mean, there's been a big movement as of late, the land back movement and acknowledging the stewards of the land that you live on now, acknowledging that it's stolen land, and also recognizing that, the people who were the stewards of the land historically and culturally are and should be the best people to kind of run that aspect of our society. And I'm really excited for her to be in that position. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure you were going to go here at some point, but I'm just very impressed so far with the diversity of the picks that he's made, not just with race, not just with gender, or I forget what position it was, but Biden also picked a trans woman for a position in his administration, and obviously Pete Buttigieg, sexual orientation. I've seen a lot of really crappy comments online saying like, oh, this person was picked to check a box, or this is tokenism. And yeah, I'm a white girl saying this, but I kind of disagree with that. I feel like tokenism was like, oh yeah, well, we have a bunch of white people in the Trump administration, so Ben Carson, you get to do something, right? Like, I think that is more
Ouch.
checking a, right? I mean, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but he was one of the only people of color in that administration. Also one of the only people to not get fired, so good for Ben. But the fact that the Biden is making a commitment to have his administration and the people who work for him reflect the diversity of our country, I think is really important. And I think that he has made some thoughtful decisions on that, like the person he's nominated for Homeland Security. His name is Alejandro Mayorkas. He is an immigrant. He is Latino. I think that he's going to have a different perspective running that position than somebody who is not an immigrant and somebody who is white. I really like his pick for energy. Granholm, she was the Jennifer Granholm. She was the governor of Michigan. She obviously had to deal with a lot of issues with the auto industry. She has a commitment to renewable energy. I think the only concerns I've seen people express about her is like, she has no experience with nuclear weapons, and that's such a big part of that role. And I'm like, well, Governor Perry had zero experience with anything to do with that. And I'm just really happy that there aren't a bunch of lobbyists and friends of the family or anything like that in any of these roles. I think the only role that I've kind of been disappointed with is that he nominated Vilsack for agriculture. And it's like, let's leave the Obama people back 4 to 8 years ago and bring some new blood in, but he has brought a lot of new blood in. So I'm happy thus far overall.
Those are a lot of great picks, a lot of great answers there. If you had to pick one as your favorite, I think you mentioned the Secretary of Interior was your favorite.
Yeah. Oh, and I also forgot another one. He picked his EPA guy today, and I think he's just has an amazing background for this position because he was the biggest like environmental position in North Carolina. His name is Michael Reagan. So I've just heard great things about him, and I think he's a great pick as well.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to say that some people are saying, as much as it's great that we're doing the diversity thing with the executive branch and his administration, some people feel like he's bringing back some of the old greatest hits from the Obama administration. Is that something that everybody sees, or is it just something that's out there in the media? Jules, do you see that?
I mean, yeah, I see it. I mean, it's there. He's definitely picking some safe people. He's definitely picking some people who are you would expect to see them there. You would expect to see them be picked. They're very much part of that Obama era, the neo-lib style of picks. Not to say they're not qualified, but they're very safe picks. There's nothing special about them other than they're highly qualified. Their politics are generally much more centrist by American definition, and they're fine. They're fine. I don't have a huge problem with that. I feel like in the end, the policy decisions that get made are made by Joe Biden, not by his cabinet. Their advisors, they're going to be running.
Feedback.
Don't know what that was. But okay, so sorry. They're safe people. They're going to do what they're going to do, but Biden really is the end all be all. And he seems to be generally flexible in terms of how he thinks things ought to be governed, and he's pushable. So these people who are running these departments are definitely, a lot of them, not all of them. The Department of the Interior, I mean, she is a true progressive. Holland, I'm again not sure how to say
We're all having troubles. It's okay.
But she is actually a true progressive, and she is the person that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been pushing for him to appoint, and he did, and that demonstrates his willingness to cater to the progressive side of the Democratic Party, and it will be something that I'm looking at in a positive way to see when things, with the things that actually matter. He seems pretty willing to push to the left a little more than he was possibly willing to be pushed before, and he's more malleable. I think even more so than Obama was malleable. So I'm looking forward to that.
Perfect. That's good. So I do want to see if I mean, because you kind of touched on it, is this cabinet progressive enough for those on the far left? And I want to ask Jake, is it progressive enough?
I mean, honestly, no. I would like to see a whole lot more things more progressive, but I think our country is gripped by the idea that if it's progressive, it has to be incremental, and I think that's nonsense. But I think Jules kind of nailed it. Like the idea that we're even entertaining this as a question is absurd. Like the last time we had any competence in DC was with Biden and Obama in the White House, and the people that they surrounded themselves with, that they worked well with, he might reach out to again. The idea that we have to defend that is just, it's poor argumentation. Like, I would laugh at somebody if this was their argument point. Like, we would move on. I'd like to see more liberalism in it, or progressivism, but I think that it makes a lot of sense what he did.
These are great questions. These are great answers. This is the reason why we have a podcast, though. So it's definitely something that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. Now, Kylan, I wanted to see if you feel like this is progressive enough, or what is your favorite pick?
You know, I'm not going to say I have a favorite pick. I do like the overall composition of his cabinet, save for Tom Vilsack. I totally don't like Tom Vilsack as agriculture secretary. I think Marcia Fudge should have been agriculture secretary. Because I think she would have brought a much greater dynamic and viewpoint towards it. Tom Vilsack had 8 years to be agriculture secretary. He sucked up to big agriculture. He sucked up to big farming and let a lot of big farming mergers go through. He didn't focus on SNAP program and a lot of the other, anti-hunger, anti-poverty programs that the Department of Agriculture actually leverage. So I don't like him there. What I'm waiting for, though, I'm waiting to see who's going to be the pick for Attorney General. I want somebody who, that is very progressive, that is an agent of change. I want someone who's going to want to keep people out of prison. I want someone who wants to make sure that there's equal application of the law for all. I want an attorney general who's going to actually prosecute white collar crime. So that's what I'm looking for most of all. That's the most important cabinet pick to me because you can't have criminal justice reform and reform the justice system if you don't have someone on the inside, which is, I'm glad when you look around the country, there's a lot of progressive minded DAs and sheriffs and people that are getting elected and are winning races. But I want somebody progressive that's going to be a change agent in the Attorney General's office.
So Kylan is excited about the Attorneys General. So that's a really exciting thing that's coming. I did kind of want to ask Amanda, what is your pick that you're excited about next?
Education. I mean, I will give Betsy DeVos credit for one and only one thing.
What will you give her credit for? Extending
the student loan freeze from the CARES Act. It was supposed to end in September. Yeah, right. It's now ending in January. Yay. Thank you.
That's pretty late. That's pretty late.
I'm just saying. I mean, like,
to her?
I know. That's what I was going to say.
The only thing I will thank her for. But otherwise, I don't like her on a lot of levels, and she wasn't qualified, and she was so focused on private schools, charter schools. She has no experience and gives no shits about public education. And I really hope that Biden picks somebody who has a public education background, has an interest in actually helping all students, and also helping uplift marginalized students, and not, only focus on rich white kids, which is kind of like, I feel like that's very much a Trump administration focus just in general. And so I'm really excited to see who they pick for education. I think that whoever they pick, I don't think it's going to be someone we've really heard of before. I don't think it's going to be a big name, but I think it's going to be someone with big experience.
Okay. That's very fair. Hopefully it's somebody with good experience, as Amanda mentioned, but all I want, and I think this is all Americans want, is just the right people in the right positions. That's the biggest thing. And somebody that's going to do right for the country in the future, because we need the right people in the right jobs right now. That's the biggest thing. I think we pretty much covered everything on the Biden administration. Anybody have anything else to add? And also, our viewers out there in the world right now, put down in the comments what your favorite picks are and what you expect to see coming up here in the future in the next, 35 days coming up here in the picks that President-elect Biden is going to choose.
So I had something I wanted to add and kind of throw to the group, see what people think. So
Go ahead.
there was some chatter and comments on my own page about the pick for transportation, Pete Buttigieg. And I know it was kind of touched on before, his general lack of experience. My thoughts are that he was, more well suited to a State Department position, given his military background, his multilingual talents, or an ambassadorship. And I feel like the reason why he was picked for this particular position, even though it's a cabinet position, it's not like, the most in your face, most people don't think of it as like the most important position. I think he was picked for it because they see him as a rising star. They're grooming him for future leadership. Whereas other people on my page were like, no, this was a tit for tat. This is a quid pro quo. You dropped out early enough in the primaries. You're going to stump for me. You're going to help me get elected. And then I'm going to reward you with a high level cabinet position. So I wanted to know what you guys think about that.
That's how politics works.
Yeah.
I feel like I should kind of answer this because he was my pick. one of my favorites. I don't believe it was a quid pro quo. I do think that he is a rising star in the realm of national politics, in the realm of kind of the new, what we want in DC. I think he kind of proved that, given all the interviews and all the how he took on kind of Fox News during the election cycle, in the days leading up to the election, on election night, and in the days after. I think he really proved that he can handle it. He can kind of take that, take that pressure, answer the questions, redirect it, not sound like a bumbling fool. So I think he is seen as somebody who can be a rising star in the and potentially be a high level cabinet pick in the future, or even run for Senate or run for president, make a serious attempt at it in 8 years or even 12 years. I mean, I think he's going to be somebody that's going to be around for a while.
Yeah, and I feel like the whole, this is a reward for dropping out. Like, they didn't reward Kristen Gillibrand for dropping out early. They didn't reward
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth, well, she didn't drop out early.
She dropped out later, but still.
Yeah, but like they didn't. He didn't reward anybody else. Like, what makes this mediocre white man who happens to have great credentials? Why is he like, why him? Right?
He kind of
if you're going to reward anybody.
Well, technically, he rewarded Kamala Harris, right?
Yeah, well, but she didn't like. I don't think he rewarded her for dropping out. I think he very strategically picked her, especially because he had already publicly stated he was going to pick a woman. So and given her fan base, even though she didn't do like incredibly in the primaries, given her very strong fan base and the fact that you can get more minority support, especially among the South Asian community, if they see themselves in those roles, that I think it was a strategic pick for VP on his part on many levels, but I don't think it was a reward for dropping out. Just like I don't think Pete's was a reward for dropping out and towing the party line and getting behind Biden.
I'm going to stick to this tangent for just a moment because I do want to ask this. Do you think that she dropped out when she did because he had mentioned that he was going to have her as a top pick for VP?
I think she dropped out because she didn't do well in Iowa. And she is smart enough to know when she's going to lose. That's what I think. And I mean, she's a prosecutor. When to, this isn't something where, I'm going to take it all the way to the box. I'm going to go all the way to trial. Like, you have to evaluate the evidence you have before you. And she didn't do well in Iowa. She didn't, that was around the time when she dropped out. So, or she dropped out. Like
she dropped out before. She dropped out
right before. I think she was looking at the polling and knew she wouldn't do well. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, I've been promised something. Like, I think she just looked at the data.
Okay. So, I mean, I only bring up Kamala. I bring up Pete, Pete was brought up by you, Amanda, but then the same thing would go for Amy Klobuchar and well, I guess that's really all you could really say is Amy and Pete and then Kamala. But do you feel like Amy, Pete, Kamala, Jules. I'm pointing at Jules. Actually, I keep forgetting. I'm not looking at anybody individually. I'm just pointing. But Jules, do you feel like one of those three, or any of those three, are going to get cabinet positions because they dropped out?
So you're talking about Klobuchar,
Harris, and Buttigieg.
okay, so like when they dropped out, did I feel like any of them were going to get
Well,
cabinet positions?
Well, now just
Okay.
because Buttigieg has gotten a cabinet position,
I don't think
Kamala Harris.
I don't think Klobuchar is going to get a cabinet position.
Okay.
I don't think anybody. She wasn't. I think the public overall felt she was kind of grating. I felt like she was kind of grating. I felt like she was just not. She was aggressive, not in a bad way, and not in a sexist way. I just thought she was not interesting in the way that she presented her viewpoints. With Buttigieg, I find him mostly boring. His politics are probably somewhat to the right of Biden. I don't think I don't see him as the future of the Democratic Party. Honestly, I think that demographically and statistically speaking, the Democratic Party is moving further to the left. Buttigieg would mean a move back to the right, and he's not interesting enough in terms of his personality, in terms of like his beliefs and his convictions, that I feel like he's really going to go far in terms of the Democratic Party on a national level. I could see him as a senator. I could see it as a congressman, but I cannot see him going very far if he tried to run for president again. He's very smart. He's very well spoken, but his politics are going to be increasingly removed from the general track that the Democratic Party is on. And I don't see that he's going to be representative of that track unless he vastly changes his viewpoints and his politics in general. He's very much a centrist Democrat in a even like a very neoliberal way, and I think that we're kind of moving away from that. And even with Joe Biden, we're moving away from that. Even Joe Biden's getting pulled to the left. He's getting pulled away from the Barack Obama, Bill Clinton neolib style of belief structure, and I don't see him being there. And the same goes with Klobuchar. She's kind of in the same way as Buttigieg, in that she's kind of on the same wavelength politically as he is. And I think people are looking for something new, not for Bill Clinton the second time around, Barack Obama the second time around. We're trying to create a better government, not the same government. I don't think they cater to that style of governance in which that we're going to progress as a country. And I think people see that. And that's why Buttigieg didn't do particularly well, and neither did Klobuchar. And Harris, as Amanda said, was, she's a prosecutor. She knows when she's losing, so she left.
Now, one of the things about it is that Biden, from 2016 on, 27, well, not even 2016, but 2017 on, led in polls, led in name recognition. He would have been the nominee in 2016 if he had run.
Probably.
But obviously, we all know why he didn't run. It was because of Beau Biden passing away, unfortunately, from cancer. So, he's had name recognition forever. He was the leader. He was the front runner. As you mentioned, Kamala saw the writing on the wall. She dropped out early because of that. Nobody else necessarily saw it. Pete won in Iowa, so he was like, I got this in the bag. But we saw how that turned out. So, I mean, it's one of the things about Pete that I can say, he's very good on TV. I think everybody's kind of mentioned that so far. And one of the things about Biden's cabinet so far is that he needs a person that can get up on TV and just talk and put a great face for the administration. Besides Jen Psaki, who's
Right.
the press secretary.
So I agree. I think Pete is really great as sort of the face of the policy to present the ideas that are there, but I don't see him being and I agree with Amanda. I think they're kind of grooming him. They put him in that position to groom him because they see him as a rising star, but I don't see him as a rising star that is going to hit the top.
Yeah.
I think that's probably if that's what they actually think, I think that's a poor assessment of the situation.
he could be Indiana senator. I'll take
Right.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on from the cabinet, because we've talked about the milk toast that is Joe Biden enough. Let's move on to a whole pile of crap from the last month. Or as our panel and our production team has put together, a pile of bullshit. It's wonderful. So the last month has been a very interesting time, the last 6 weeks. We've obviously had an election on November 3rd. We obviously were announcing or we didn't, but the media had announced a projected winner on November 7th. Then we've gone through about 60 lawsuits, kind of going through and trying to challenge those results. One of them was won. It was a very lukewarm win from the administration in that they had to move poll watchers closer. And that was
Not a
it.
win. Not a win. That's a mutual compromise. It's not a win.
It's a compromise. It's a compromise.
It's a compromise.
But
It's not a win.
win.
You can't call that a win. I've talked to you about this
I know
so
you
many
talked to me
times.
about it, but it's a win in that Trump
so they got to
Trump-
stand 5 feet closer.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
The Trump administration got what they
okay.
wanted. They wanted them to be closer. They win.
But
That
they
win was the
didn't have
equivalent of a
a-
participation trophy.
They didn't have a judge say you win.
Yes,
No,
they have
literally,
not said
literally
a judge.
the other side was like, no, you can step 5 feet
Fine,
closer.
fine, do it. They have not had
Not
a
a
judge
win.
that said it won. So
No,
outside
not a
of
court
that
win.
one, they've had 59 losses in the courts.
60.
But the biggest one is the 60th one that Jules is alluding to. That was Texas versus Pennsylvania for 2020.
And Georgia and Michigan and I think Wisconsin.
It was Wisconsin, all four
Yeah.
of those states, but the official legal thing was
Yeah.
Texas versus Pennsylvania. But
Peak
Yeah,
2020.
peak 2020, it's a great way to end this year off. This all happened last week, so we are talking about really somewhat good news, or not necessarily good news, but current news. I'm trying to stay impartial on that. But to give you a little bit of backstory, this was filed by Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, who himself is under investigation and has been indicted in 2015, 5 years ago,
In federal court.
For securities fraud. Just saying, there's a little bit of a weird thing with that. But the reason why people are saying that he put this lawsuit out there because of his investigation and indictment, he's trying to get pardoned for securities fraud. But that's a tangent. Moving on. It's basically to temporarily withhold the certification of the results from Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and in Georgia, which are 4 of the 6 battleground states that the Trump administration has been, or at least the legal team that Trump has put out there, has been trying to change or play within the courts. Obviously, within the courts, they are saying that this is not about fraud. This is not about trying to overturn elections. This is about standing and about procedures and things like that. But in the media, and especially in right-wing media, they are putting out there that, hey, this is fraudulent, this election was rigged, it was stolen, so on and so forth. Basically, they're saying that those 4 states violated the Constitution, that they're changing their election rules outside of the legislature. And 126 Republican members of Congress and 18 Republican attorneys generals, I'm sorry, basically signed on to this, as well as New California, which is a fake state out there, and New Nevada, which is also a fake state out there. So if we want those to be admitted to the union, we got some new states coming, but we'll do DC and Puerto Rico first. Ooh, did I put that out there? Whoops. But Trump has said that this was the big lawsuit. This was the big one. This is the one that the Supreme Court justices would have courage to do they would have the courage to give the election its due, basically. So I want to go to Amanda. Why did the Supreme Court say that this is a bunch of nonsense?
Okay, so basically, there are kind of like 3 things that were at issue in terms of defenses to this lawsuit. And they are, well, 4. And they really kind of decided it based on one of them. So the first issue is called original jurisdiction. Does the court have original jurisdiction? So most of the time when you file a lawsuit, you have to file it in a lower court, a state court, a federal district court, and then wait for ruling and then appeal it, wait for ruling, appeal it. And if it's a federal issue, an issue of federal law or a federal constitutional issue, then you can go to the feds and make your way up to the Supreme Court. But in limited, very limited circumstances, you can actually put your lawsuit first in the Supreme Court. And one of those areas is for disputes between states. And so that's how Texas was trying to get there. The second issue was standing. So for any lawsuit, standing just means, do you have a legal interest in this issue? Does it affect you at all, or to a point where you can even talk to a court about this? The third issue is something called justiciability or non-justiciability, which the courts also call a political question, which is basically like, well, because of the separation of powers and because of like what a hot button political issue this is just too political. The court needs to stay neutral. We're not going to rule on it. And then the last thing is called the doctrine of latches, which is basically you waited too long to challenge this. Because one of the defenses that these states were bringing up was like, why are you doing this lawsuit only after you learned the results of the election, when you should have done it before people even started voting, after our Republican state legislatures approved these measures? Texas was trying to say that they had standing based on the fact that they were like, well, the Senate could end up, being, 50-50. Depending on the runoffs in Georgia. And if Kamala Harris is the vice president, we're worried about the vice presidential election. If she's vice president, that tilts it to the Democrats, and that's unfair to Texas. And so what the Supreme Court ultimately did is it was a unanimous decision for different reasons. 7 of the justices, including all 3 justices who Trump appointed, said, there is no original jurisdiction here. You don't even qualify, even though this is a dispute between the states, and you don't have standing. And then Alito and Thomas said, Alito and Thomas said, you do have jurisdiction, and because you have jurisdiction to bring this before the Supreme Court, we can't just reject your petition or your bill of complaint, but we're not going to grant you relief. Even if they're basically saying yeah, you can come before us, but you still lose. So that's how it was a unanimous decision, essentially based on standing. So they put a lot more words in there than they did with the Pennsylvania lawsuit, where they just said we're one sentence rejection. And so if anybody has questions about the legalese that I threw out there, I hope I made it easy to understand, but that's basically what went down and how the court made its decision. They just, seven of them said no, and that was enough. They would have needed 4 to say, we're going to actually hear this.
So
or to rule the other way.
I do want to point out that Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch, and Justice Barrett did not say that they wanted to even hear the case. And these were all Trump's appointees that were confirmed, and that were one of the things with Amy Comey Barrett. It's so crazy with her name. ACB. One of the things with ACB during the confirmation process was that she was being put in place because of the election in mind, and she was like, whatever.
Well, and like one of the things that I think Trump either didn't realize or completely forgot is that Kavanaugh and Barrett worked on Bush v. Gore, on Bush's legal team. So they are very familiar with election laws. And I am not surprised that they didn't want to take this up, because
of course
they would have ruled against him. I think they would have ruled against him on the merits. Even if Texas had standing, there's not sufficient evidence. And, you know, again, doctrine of latches, that you snooze, you lose, is what doctrine of latches means. I should have brought this earlier. I think they would have lost on the merits, even if the court had heard the case. So,
okay. I wanted to ask another question, but you just brought up another question I want to ask. Amanda, I did want to ask if they had brought this case to the court, like November 13th, would they have at least listened to it and put it through the process?
No, I think they would have I think it still would have been the issue of standing. There still would have been an issue of the doctrine of latches, because the election was ultimately decided on November 7th. Then it was just legal challenge after legal challenge, recount after recount, grow Biden's lead with those recounts. I think an appropriate time to do this would have been around the time those state legislatures established their procedures for a pandemic presidential eletion.
So you're saying like July?
Yeah, like when that's when the issue is ripe. That's when, if you're trying to stop something from happening, you can't wait. In our line of work, it's you snooze, you lose. You don't object, you waive it. Bye. Like, you don't get to bring it up out like way after the fact. So I don't think that they would have won on the merits, first of all, meaning won on the actual analyzing the facts. But if they were going to bring it, they should have brought it before the election even started, if they're going to challenge the procedures that GOP legislatures designed.
That's a very good point there, man. You just laid it all out there. It's all good.
I feel like you can't complain about a process that you didn't object to just because you don't like the outcome. And I think courts agree with that.
Yep. And so people within the GOP and on the right and their media have brought up how, this compares to Bush v. Gore, and that we need to take the time to make sure we get everything out there. I did want to ask Vlad about that and say, hey, is this similar to Bush v. Gore, or is it its own dichotomy?
No, it's not even close in my estimation. I'm no lawyer, I'm no legal expert, but just looking at it from the outside, this is simply about one man's inability to accept the fact that he lost. And when you bring about so many lawsuits and lose so many lawsuits, that the New York Jets ownership group is probably sending you sympathy cards at this point. It is over. It is. Oh, you don't have legal standing right now. You just look like a fool. And, you know, you got Rudy Giuliani out there making a complete ass out of himself. You got Donald Trump, his kids. You've got, you know, the White House press secretary. You got everyone out there just making complete asses out of themselves when there's concede, accept the fact that it's over. You tried to stack the Supreme Court. It didn't work. Now you've got 100 some odd sitting members of Congress out there who are agreeing that we need to basically overturn the results of a legal election, which has a whole, you know, I have whole other opinions on that. I don't believe they should be seated. I don't believe they should be ever allowed to hold public office again for that reason. But you know, that's the difference. Like in Florida in 2000, there was a lot of things that were going on. You know, you had a lot of ballots with hanging chads. You had, you know, manual recounts and other things. And if I remember correctly, it was all about the case in Florida was basically they were told to stop the recount because of equal protections, where different counties had different systems in place. Here, it's just all about one man's, you know, not even one man child's inability to accept the fact that 81, you know, some odd million people basically wanted him to get the fuck out.
So
Yeah.
since
And let me tell you, can I jump in really quickly?
go ahead.
Yeah, and just piggybacking on top of that too is I'm so sick of hearing about the 74 million people that voted for Donald Trump and their fucking delicate sensibilities. What about the 82 million people who voted for Joe Biden and who wanted to get this orange bastard out of office? What about what we feel? You know, and those 126 pissants in the House of Representatives, they're fucking full of sedition. They shouldn't even be seated back. They actively went to overturn an election and overturn democracy. Nancy Pelosi has it within her right to say, you know what, you motherfuckers aren't getting seated back in Congress when the next Congress comes. And you know what, let her fight it in the Supreme Court. Maybe the Supreme Court will overturn it and they'll have to be seated, but you know what, at least fight and say, you know what, fuck you guys. You don't get away with this. You're going to pay a price. I'm going to rake you over the coals. I'm going to make sure all 126 of you bastards lose in the midterms. You know, it's time we fight with some balls. You know, because the Republicans are already doing it now. They're already trying to curtail mail-in voting in Georgia right now. They're already trying to cut down early voting in Georgia right now. All across the country, they're going to be going up and fighting early voting and trying to curtail voting rights because, damn, all these people voted. We had major turnout, and guess what? Republicans and Trump lost. And so what is the GOP going to do across the country once more? Oh, we better get some voter IDs and some signature matches and cut down early voting and get rid of mail-in voting. It's time to kick some people in the balls. And I'm hoping we take these 2 Georgia Senate seats so we can pass a new Voting Rights Act, a new Civil Rights Act, expand democracy, because guess what? We expand democracy, Republicans don't stand a chance because they can't win on the merits, and they sure as can't win with their fucking supply side economics, racist, stupid, anti-science, anti-intellectual bullshit.
Mike has been dropped, people. It's over. I don't even need to say anything else. No, I'm kidding. So since it's been brought up twice from Vlad and Kylan, right now the official total is 81.2 million votes for Joe Biden, the most of any campaign and candidate ever. And Donald Trump has 74.2 million votes. So it's a 6 million vote lead for Joe Biden. Or 7 million vote lead by Joe Biden. Donald Trump, he is correct when he does say he has gotten the most votes of any sitting president ever. But that is literally discounting the fact that 81 million people had voted for the other side. So I did want to go back to the original topic and ask Jules, is this similar to what happened 20 years ago?
No, it's not at all similar to what happened 20 years ago. What happened 20 years ago was a matter of 300 votes in Florida that may or may not have gone to Al Gore. Who knows? Who knows if that would have happened? But here, I just want to correct Vlad here. Trump is not, he's not in denial that he lost. This is not him saying, I didn't lose. This is him putting on theater. He is putting on theater for his cult, for his supportive cult, so he can continue to make the whole thing about him. There is nothing to do with him being in denial. He knows he lost. everybody knows he lost, but he has his cult, and the Republican Party knows his cult got him elected, and his cult needs to continue to support the Republican Party. They don't want to say anything because Donald Trump doesn't want to say anything. Donald Trump knows he lost, and he will continue to say he didn't lose. He will continue to latch on to any conspiracy theory that he possibly can, because he knows that his supporters, his idiot, like narrow-minded supporters, will latch on to anything he says. If he says the election was stolen, everybody who supports him will be, oh yeah, the election was stolen. There's no evidence for that, but Donald Trump said it. Donald Trump is not as much of an idiot as we think he is. And we should not be thinking that he's going to just go away. He's not going to go away. Trumpism is not going away. This is an attempted fascist takeover of our government. And obviously it is not working, but that doesn't mean that it could not in the future work. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a situation. Yes, Biden won today, but we have redistricting. We did poorly. Democrats did poorly in state legislators this year during the elections. So things are getting redistricted. Make no mistake, there is going to be tons of gerrymandering, and we are in danger of losing the House again in 2022.
So you bring up a great point. Trump being on the ticket was a big deal. Because he helped down ballot candidates. That's one of the reasons why Susan Collins won, Joni Ertz won, Tom Tillis won. All the people that were kind of expected to lose pulled it out in the end, and they weren't even close. They were pretty significant wins for those candidates. Even Lindsey Graham, he went against the candidate that outraised him and outspent him. Same thing with Mitch McConnell. They still won their elections. One thing I did want to point out, since Jules brought it up, in the 31 days after the election, Donald Trump raised $208 million for his leadership PAC. What that means is he can use that money for whatever he wants. He does not have to use it toward his campaign. He does not have to use it toward anybody else's campaign. He could use it for whatever he wants. And that's one of the reasons why he's doing what he's doing. It's not that he doesn't know that he lost. He knows he lost. He wants to get more money, as Jules said, out of the people that supported him. Now, I don't necessarily think that it's supporting any Republicans. It is that it's anybody that's going to support him. And as we've seen in some of the things, in some of the rhetoric going on in the Georgia runoffs, that's coming up here in about 2 weeks, it doesn't matter if you're not supporting him, if you're not going out and fervently saying that the election was stolen or the election was rigged. You are the bad guy. You are then labeled as a rhino, a Republican in name only. And that is what is fundraising for Donald Trump and whatever he wants. So he will support whatever candidate he wants in the future. He will support whatever candidates he wants for the House and Senate in 2022, based on him almost raising $250,000. It's $250,000, but still, it's just in the month since the election. And that's something that we all have to remember out there right now.
So Tyler, I just wanted to respond to a point, Jules, you made. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I do think at this point he's being strategic. I also think he is doing everything he can to keep up this fight and to keep up, some semblance of hope that he's able to overturn the results of a legal election. I mean, why else would they have alternate electors, as our resident White House Nazi Stephen Miller said? But I think
alternate electors are not a thing.
I know,
Nazi.
I know, but I think the other side of it is that he knows that January 21st, his ass is going to be put to the fire by the by New York.
Oh yeah.
For
I mean,
and
so
that's why he's trying so hard to stay in power, and he's trying so hard to do all this. And I guarantee you, some of that money that he's raising, that $200 million, Tyler, that you said, is going to go to his legal defense, because he owes something like 400 million to Deutsche Bank.
Well, wait. You say this is going to his legal defense. You can't even say it's going to his legal defense, because he didn't want to pay $8 million for a full recount of Wisconsin. He only wanted to pay $3 million for 2 counties. So
yeah, but he's a grifter who doesn't want to spend any money. That's
No.
been historical. I mean,
Nixon
just
was a
look at
grifter.
the Polish brigade that built Trump Tower. He didn't pay them because they were illegal immigrants. But right now, what he's trying to do is he's trying to stay, he's trying his best, grasping at straws to stay in power, because he knows that he is going to be just investigated. He's going to be investigated. His kids are going to be investigated. I'm pretty sure they're going to investigate Barron at this point. Melania has probably got her bags packed and divorce papers ready to go.
Barron's going to be investigated for how tall he got over the last year and a half.
Right. He's going to be investigated for where to get his steroids. But that's what he's doing. Right now, it is purely self-preservation. He does not care about his supporters. He doesn't care about Republicans running in these 2 Georgia elections. He is all about self-preservation.
yeah. Well,
He wants to
I mean,
make sure that his name isn't tarnished and isn't associated with a grift, which it will be. But that's
look,
what he
Spiro
wants.
Agnew was up on very similar corruption charges,
Mhm.
and you know what happened? Nothing.
Yep, exactly.
Zero
And-
things.
and
Zero
also-
things happened. It wasn't federal. It was state. And you know
Agreed.
what happened? They didn't do anything. So why should we think that if Spiro Agnew was immune, why would not Trump be?
I mean, to that
Spiro
point-
Agnew was never elected president.
Yeah, he's still vice president.
And let me tell you,
No,
Cyrus
agreed.
Well, wait. I want to go to
Still
Jake
a rich,
next. Jake.
Still a rich white man.
There was good reason to try Bush for war crimes, and Obama said we need to move forward, and Biden was behind Obama in that 100%. I think if you want to point to reasons why we're not going to try anyone, that's probably your best one.
Exactly.
There you go.
Maybe.
Kylan,
Just
you
try
had
his
something to
fucking
add
power.
there too.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think it's going to be different this time. Cyrus Vance, what he's doing, he is unraveling the entire criminal enterprise that Donald Trump has right now. He is subpoenaing tax returns. He has the records. They have Michael Cohen's testimony. They already have an impaneled grand jury. He's already far along. Once the time he gets out of office, his ass is grass. Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, has a civil case going against Donald Trump for falsifying records when it comes to inflated prices on his properties. She's going to get him on tax fraud, and he's going to get fined tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. They are coming for his ass. He can pardon himself. He can pardon Rudy. He can pardon his whole family. Nobody's going to have the balls to federally prosecute him anyway. Biden's not going to have the balls. Whoever Attorney General is not going to have the balls. He'll skate federally, but Letitia James and Cyrus Vance in New York are going to have a pound of flesh out of his tanned ass.
I hope you're right.
Speaking of pardons, I'm also fairly certain that the reason this lawsuit is happening in Texas is because the Attorney General there is just praying for a presidential pardon.
Thank you for bringing it right back to the beginning of the conversation, Vlad. I love
You're
it.
welcome.
So we started this saying Ken Paxton has been essentially investigated for the last 5 years, and his trial has been delayed because he's been indicted for securities fraud. But moving on, it's 9 o'clock. It's the top of the hour, so we're pretty much done tonight with our podcast. But we always end with a fun topic. And tonight, I wanted to ask the panel, what was their favorite thing that they purchased for themselves, not for anybody else, but for themselves during quarantine? So I want to start off with Jake.
Weed, man.
I mean, it's California. We got to keep ourselves calm. So, I mean, it's a way to sleep, right?
It's the sleep, yeah, sure. And lots of other things too. Tragic baiting. On weed.
We
Yeah, Kylan.
So, there goes Kylan right there, starting it off. So I want to go to Jules next. What was your favorite thing that you purchased during quarantine
Well,
for yourself?
I bought a turntable and a whole sound system and a bunch of records that
What's your DJ name?
I didn't get a fucking DJ station. I got a turntable to play records on.
But usually when you get a turntable, you got to start working it out. Like,
No. I just
You can only
wanted to
scratch a
play
lot,
my
right?
fucking Grateful Dead and Dr. Dre. Which
Is that a
literally
Beats
I
album?
bot both of those. So I got
That's a hell of a
Grateful Dead and
collaboration.
Dr. Dre.
Yeah,
And
best collaboration.
well, no, I mean separate albums. But I also yesterday I caved and I bought these Philips Hue lights that
Oh, nice.
Oh, those are dope.
those are so fucking fun, and I'm gonna sink so much money into that and more records. So fuck. There goes all my paychecks.
They've moved to the music.
so we're going to DJ Comrade next, and Vlad.
DJ Comrade.
Vlad, what was your favorite thing that you purchased?
In Soviet Russia, beat drops you.
Thanks for stealing my joke, Amanda. No, I actually I actually bought this maybe a couple of weeks before lockdown, but it was during the pandemic. But I think my favorite thing is the pellet grill that I bought.
The what?
Pellet grill. It's like have you ever heard of Traeger? No? Okay. Well,
we need more specifics, man. You're gonna have to tell us what the fuck you're talking about.
He can smoke. He could.
I can grill. I can hot smoke. I can cold smoke.
Yeah,
do a bunch
I
of stuff
totally
like
know
that.
what that is.
Yeah. That's been
just haven't heard that
my
term.
favorite thing that I've bought so far
That's
throughout
legit.
this for myself.
Wow.
I can't wait till this is over so you can cook for us.
Yeah, Vlad.
Exactly.
Dr.
Well,
Dre.
that's partially why I'm hoping this lasts for another 12 months now.
Oh, so you can learn how to cook better with it?
No, so I don't have to cook for you guys.
Oh.
We're just gonna show up and use it then.
Yeah, I thought you loved us, Vlad. Come on.
I do. Come on.
So since Vlad doesn't love us, I know somebody that does. Kylan, what is your favorite thing that you bought for yourself while you?
I'm a love bug, baby. I'm a love bug. I'm full of love. So the favorite thing I'm going to buy, I haven't brought it yet, but for Christmas, we're going to have a feast at my house. So we're going to blow like $250, $300 and just buy a shit ton of king crab and steam it and just feast for Christmas. So like, I love king crab and we're going to get shit tons of king crab and we're just going to get butter and garlic and pepper and just fucking just crack that shit.
Dude, you got to be careful though. If you get too high before you eat that crab, it's so hard to figure out how to crack that crab. You're just like, what do I do with this shit? I've had this experience.
I do my best work when I'm high, Jules. I'm gonna get good and inebriated and just crack it all open.
All right. Maybe I was just super inexperienced. I had an experience. Me and Michelle were eating crab for Thanksgiving, and we all ate edibles, my entire family, and we're like, how do we do this?
And so we go from our libations to our legal scholar here, Amanda. What is your favorite thing that you purchased?
Oh, legal scholar. I just know things. Okay, so I'm gonna have two answers. One is the fact that because my gym was closed, I was doing a lot more hiking. So I bought these really cool hiking water shoes that look like sneakers, but you can go in lakes and rivers. And then I bought like a nice hydration backpack so that I don't have to carry a bunch of water bottles. So I've gotten a lot of use out of that. But my other thing that I wanted to bring up that I have spent a lot of money on in the last 2 weeks is a plug I want to make for a really good cause. It's called Trans Santa. I'll see if our comment moderator is willing to throw in a link. It's an effort by the actress who plays Angel on FX's Pose, India Moore, to have basically people buy gifts and gift cards for trans youth under the age of 24. So they post, letters to Trans Santa. They explain who they are, how they identify, what their struggles are. And then there are links to Target gift registries. And so you can buy someone gender affirming clothing. You can buy them the makeup that they want. If they need a gift card for groceries, I'm a little obsessed, and I think it's a great cause. And I have spent, like I said, a lot of money at Target in the last week or two because of that, because I think it's awesome. So that's my little plug.
Wow. That's very honorable of you there.
No, it's not for being honorable. Just I think more people need to know about it.
Okay. One of our other panelists, Hannah, said that she bought herself a bunch of 100-gallon fabric pots earlier in the year for herself. So that's hey, gotta enjoy something. I can say for me, the favorite thing that I purchased for myself has been I bought myself a bed frame that was very nice. I've lost a lot of things in my life this year, and it's been a very expensive year. But one of the small things that I got for myself was a bed frame that I really enjoy and makes my room look like I am an actual adult. So I I can say that that's my favorite thing that I purchased for myself. And on that note, I want to thank my panelists tonight for a great podcast. Again, this is Project SIP. This was our 18th podcast of the year. We've been doing this for 36 weeks, 9 months again. It's been a fun time together with you guys. We're going to do another podcast at the end of the year on December 31st. Will be our 19th podcast, and it's going to be a reflection on what we've done this year and a couple other little topics. Hopefully you join us. Again, if you have any questions or comments, or if you want to say what your favorite thing that you bought for yourself this year, please put it in the comments. Like our page here and join us for our next time. We'll see you on the
Subscribe
next one.
and tell your
Yeah,
friends.
share it.
And honestly, what are you doing this New Year's Eve? If you're
We're
going
all
out
at
somewhere
home.
to a party, then you're doing it wrong.
Especially here in California,
Quarantine.
we're all at home because nothing's open. So you might as well join us, and we're going to enjoy our evening. So enjoy it with us. We'll see you on New Year's Eve.
We're the Bill O'Reilly.
We're the Bill O'Reilly.
We're the Bill O'Reilly of the podcast world because we do it live.
We're going to be doing it live. I hope you guys can enjoy us. Again, like and share our page with you and your friends, and we'll see you in the next one. Good night, guys.
Thanks.